Hello, my name is Ivan Taylor, and I'm from Ontario, Canada. And I would like to share with you today some work that myself and two of my colleagues have done on institutional change to control corruption. My two colleagues are Aman Ullah from Pakistan and Mark Sandoval from Costa Rica. And we looked at 14 institutions and how they interrelate to control corruption. There's governance institutions and development institutions that we looked at. So under the governance institutions, we have control of corruption, voice and accountability, political stability, rule of law, government effectiveness, regulatory quality, attitude towards corruption, and control of organized crime. And under the economic development institutions, we had economic openness, government expenditure, control of inflation, GDP growth, GDP per capita, control of income inequality, and foreign direct investment. And Aman Ullah, he developed an econometric analysis that we used as the basis for our causal loop model of the impact of the connections between the institutions in terms of cause and effect. So here we see the connections between the governance institutions and corruption, and here we see the impact of the economic development institutions and corruption. And some of these have a direct impact on corruption and others have an indirect impact on corruption. And we used these connections to build our system dynamics model. We looked at a system dynamics model where each institution was modeled as a stock that changed over time based on a certain time to change. And it was a goal gap type of situation where we have a goal and we have a current value and we close the gap between the goal and the gap, between the goal and the target. So then we have this idea of progress, where progress is the current value quality of the institution compared to the initial value. And this progress can be increasing or decreasing. This is important because this is how we connect the control of corruption to the other institutions. We have this idea of a target control of corruption, which is based on the policies of the government of the day. And then we will look at the idea of effort, which we call a multiplier, which tries to improve the quality of the institutions based on applying a certain amount of effort to get a new target value. Now, notice here that we have a target value specified by the government of the day. However, this target may not be reachable because it's impacted by other institutions, either positively or negatively. So in this case, control of corruption is impacted by progress in control of organized crime, progress in voice and accountability, progress in control of inflation, and progress in control of income inequality. And these can enhance or inhibit the ability of the government of the day to reach their target. So each of the institutions is modeled in this way with a stock and a flow and a target. However, what changes from institution to institution is these progress values, how they are connected to the other institutions. So we were able to collect data from 1996 to 2019 on the quality of these 14 institutions. And we collected data from the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, and the International Monetary Fund, which provide data and indexes of institutional quality for each of these 14 institutions. These values, though, are in many different scales. So we converted these values to be all in a 0 to 1 scale, where 1 was perfect quality and 0 was perfect inequality, or not the perfect neglect of the institution. Then we were able to use the data that we collected to calibrate the model to the historical data. And we did this by minimizing the sum of squared error, the weighted sum of squared error between the data and the model. And then once we had a calibrated model, we could use this to project into the future the quality of each of the institutions in the near future. And we could also use the model to look at the impact of policy changes to improve the institutional quality on the control of corruption. So this data from the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, and the International Monetary Fund is available for almost every country in the world. So we set up the model to run actually in Excel. We converted the model from Vensim to Excel, and then we set up macros to extract the data from the World Bank database and the World Economic Forum database, and so on, for the country of interest. And then we would calibrate the data to the model to the data using the Excel solver to minimize the sum of squared error. And then we would use macros to do projections into the future and evaluate policies that might improve the quality of the institutions. So I want to show you the results of 4 countries in Latin America that we ran the model for. So just, I'm going to bring up the Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to bring up Costa Rica. And let me just show you how this model works. I'm going to run it for Costa Rica. So I enter the name of the country, Costa Rica here, and then it extracts the data from the database and asks me about the election cycle or the political cycle of Costa Rica, because we need to know when the elections occurred so we can calibrate the model to be influenced by the government of the day. So each of these elections will lead to a different government, and that will lead to a different set of priorities for the government in terms of effort to improve the quality of the institutions. So I've input now the Costa Rican elections already, so I'll just accept that these are correct. And now I'm going to develop the model, and I'm going to calibrate the model to the data. So here is the development of the model and how I'm calibrating it. And here is the squared error in the institutions between the data and the model. This is a weighting factor based on the relative values of the squared error. And then this is the weighted value here of the squared error, which we try to minimize. So now we're minimizing the weighted squared error for 2002's election. And now we're minimizing the weighted squared error for 2006 election. And then we'll do 2010. And then we'll do 2014. So now we're doing 2010. And we'll just wait a few minutes. Okay, so now we're going to do 2014. We're going to minimize the weighted squared error. And notice that we're minimizing the total error for all of the institutions at the same time. So, so we're not just looking at one institution, we're looking at all the institutions over all of the time periods. So now here's the results of the calibration for Costa Rica for control of corruption. And you can see the data in blue and the model in pink. So you can see that there's a fairly good match between the model and the data. And the data ends in 2019. And then the model projects into the future and it shows some increasing for a while, but then the institutional qualities of other institutions start to show an impact and have a decline in control of corruption in the next few years up until 2026. So you can see here that the value was fairly high at 60 out of 100, and then it dropped down to about 52 or so. So that is the control of corruption. Now we can look at the other institutions. So here's the here's the GDP growth, the calibration there. Here's the GDP per capita. Here's the government expenditure, the control of income inequality, the control of inflation, the economic openness, government effectiveness, political stability, regulatory quality, rule of law, voice and accountability, attitude towards corruption, and control of organized crime. So those are the 14 institutions and the calibration of them. Now, I want to show you the way we look at policy impacts on control of corruption. So we have this idea here of multipliers, and we set these values to 1, and that represents the current level of effort that's being expended to improve these institutions. So that is the baseline value. And then we want to look at increasing the effort to improve the institutions. And so we'll now look at extra effort here to improve the institutions. And I'm going to run the model to compare different levels of effort. So let me run the model here, and I will run a little program, and we will look at how to improve the control of corruption by increasing the effort by 1 unit of extra effort. So we can see here that we can, if we start at about 53%, we can get almost perfect control of corruption by allocating 1 additional effort of a unit of effort. And this is an abstract concept of allocating effort to improve institutions, but we think this is a useful way to prioritize the policies to try to do the best we can with the effort available. So if we looked at a particular value, so let's just go here and remember we have this value here of the control of corruption with the current amount of effort. And so if we go back to the model and we look at improving the control of corruption by allocating a half a unit of effort, we see that we want to increase the effort by 42% in the area of control of income inequality, and 8% in the effort expended to improve the rule of law. And that gives us a control of corruption that is above 80 on the scale. And you can see that we've changed it from a downward trend in the future to an upward trend by allocating effort to improve the control of corruption. And this will impact on the other institutions. So we see here the GDP growth, the GDP per capita, the government expenditure, income inequality is particularly important here. We've put a lot of effort in improving income inequality, control of income inequality. Here is the control of inflation, which is improved. Here is openness, government effectiveness improves, political stability improves, regulatory quality improves, voice and accountability, and so on. So we can see that this has a ripple effect throughout the system. And the last thing I want to show you is the idea of scenarios. So this is an optimization process. However, we can also look at scenarios where we allocate effort we pick and choose the effort we want to allocate to each of the institutions. So here we have a best case, an expected case, and a worst case. In the best case, I allocate 10% more effort to every institution. In the worst case, I neglect each of the institutions by 10%. So I reduce the effort by 10% compared to the expected case for each of the institutions. And if I run this model now, I will see that I have this kind of result where there's a large gap between the best case, the expected case, and the worst case. So in the best case, we have a considerable improvement in the control of corruption. And in the worst case, we see the neglect of the institutions has created a significant decrease in the control of corruption. So now let me go to the other countries. So I will close this and I'll bring up results for Dominican Republic. And here is the calibrated model for the Dominican Republic. We see here that the initial value was 38 out of 100, which is fairly low compared to Costa Rica. And it decreased for a while, and then it increased, and it looks like we're projecting that it will flatten out in the future. And we can look at the other institutions here, and we can see the quality of the calibration for each of these institutions. And then we can look at the ability to improve the institutions. So if we go here and we run this idea of return, we look to improve institutions by adding, say, a unit of effort to it. We see that we can increase the quality of the control of corruption up to over 60% with an additional unit of effort. So if we look at the control of corruption here, we see it at 38%. And if we go back and we add a unit of effort to the institutional change, we can see that we can get, we allocate the effort according to these values here. Um, so we see we allocate the effort to controlling income inequality, controlling inflation, and controlling organized crime. And then we end up with the control of corruption that actually is above the scale. So if we change the scale here to we see that we increase the control of corruption up to above 60%. So we see we've made a substantial improvement in the control of corruption for the Dominican Republic. And we can run the scenarios as well. So if we run the same scenarios, increasing by 10% or decreasing by 10%, we see the range of values between the best case and the worst case for control of corruption for Dominican Republic. Let me move on now to the next country. So let's look at Ecuador. And here we see the control of corruption for Ecuador for the calibrated model. We can look at the other institutions. So this is the control of corruption. Now we can also look at on trying. This starts at 38, drops down to about 33, and we can try to improve it by allocating more effort. So if we allocate a unit of effort here, we can get we can increase the control of corruption up to about 45. So if we do this to the model, we can see that by allocating a unit of effort, we get this kind of result. So we see that we're increasing the control of corruption, but notice that there is some impact of the other institutions, which means we're not able to sustain that increasing level of growth in equality. But we can also look at extending this. So if we did more effort, let's say we could provide 2 units of effort and we want to see the results here, we can see that that there is a limit on how much starting to see a decline here. Let me do it, run one more time here. We'll give it 3 units of effort. And I just wanted to show that, that it reaches a limit. So there you can see that it's starting to flatten out. And because of limitations in improving the other institutions, the ability to control corruption is limited to under 70 out of 100 on the scale. And again, we can do the scenario analysis. And we see here that we have a situation of further neglect of the institution causes this to decrease over the expected case, and an effort to increase all of the institutions will lead to some improvement in the results in control of corruption. So the last country I want to show is El Salvador. So let me bring up El Salvador. So here's El Salvador, and we can see that El Salvador started at around 43 and then declined for a while, increased for a while, and now is declining again, but looks to be sort of reaching an equilibrium value after 2020, 25, 26. And again, we can look at the other institutions, and we can also do an optimization. So if we looked to optimize the effort, if we run this with one extra unit of effort, we allocate 29% to control of income inequality. We allocate 41% to the rule of law, and we allocate an additional 29% to control of organized crime, and that leads to a significant increase in the control of corruption in El Salvador. And we can run the scenarios as well. So if we run the scenarios, we see again that we have this large spread in the results for El Salvador, where the best case is significantly better, the worst case is significantly worse by changing the amount of effort. So as I said, this model can be run for almost any country in the world. If you're interested in seeing the results for your country, you can contact me, and I can show you the results for your country. And then just as a conclusion, we have developed a systematics model of the institutional relationships in a country in an effort to determine some institutional changes that can improve the control of corruption. And we were able to collect data on institutional quality and determine quality trends on how the data was changing over time. And then using those quality trends with our model of cause and effect between the institutions, we are able to project the quality of these institutions into the future. And in particular, we felt that if we could solve some of the quality problems in the institutions by adding effort to improve the quality, we can have an impact on the control of corruption in that country. So you can reach me at this email address, and I'd be happy to talk to you about how this might apply to your country. Thank you very much for your time.